In this video, we're talking all about Fantasmic's glorious return. We're also going to talk about, Fantasmic version 1.0 versus 2.0. We're going to talk about the Lion King show in the Fantasyland Theater. And we might even dive into a little Peter Rice, Bob Chapek drama. There's a lot to discuss today with a fantastic panel coming up on OG55. Hey everybody, welcome aboard to another episode of Orange Grove 55. We have a very special guest today joining us, Mr. Theme Park Casual. Welcome back to the show, man. It's fun having you back on, talking some shop.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me back, and especially that we'll be talking about probably my absolute favorite aspect of the Walt Disney Company with Fantasmic.
Yes. Well, if you can let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media, on YouTube, all that good stuff.
You can find me on Twitter at Theme Park Casual, and you can also find me on YouTube with my brand new budding YouTube channel, which is by the name Theme Park Casual.
Yes. And everybody at home, check out his content. I will link it in the description. I'll also link it in some cards above and the end screen. Definitely support his stuff. He does phenomenal work. The first video that he did was about Knott's new coaster. Great insight, really good stuff. So give him all the love, support, and subscribe to Mr. Casual. And again, Casual, thank you for coming on, brother.
Thank you.
And as always, producer Dre, Vash Guy, host of Freshly Squeezed. Welcome back, brother.
Hey, it is good to be back. Good to be back. Coming off of actually seeing Fantasmic in person. This is a really kind of a fun topic, and I know we have we definitely have some maybe emotional memories locked up in this show, and it's just great. I love these kind of topics, so I'm really excited to be here. The best place to see me is going to be, or best place to talk to me, I should say, is going to be at Vashka, right down there, just like it's spelled. And the best place to see me, there you go, is going to be on the channel you're watching right now, Orange Grove 55 at Freshly Squeezed, your source for juicy news and info, squeezed fresh right from the Grove. I haven't played this one in a while, so I'll go ahead and play it.
But really, nothing compares with a freshly squeezed.
Oh, I love that. And by the way, because Theme Park Casual is on, I went ahead and rocking the shirt. Theme Park Casual. Oh, yes. Man, I love it. I love the design. Casual. This is awesome. I do appreciate it.
You have amazing fashion sense, I must say.
Well, I try. But it wouldn't be possible without you, so thank you so much for that. And from what I understand, do we break news here that you're going to be debuting a store soon? Or
yes, it will be debuting soon. I have a few designs ready to go, and hopefully with the next video, I will be announcing not only the store but also a small giveaway, possibly.
Cool. Awesome.
Awesome.
We look forward to that. Keep us in the loop, Casual, and we'll definitely check that out, man. That's pretty cool.
100%. 100%.
Pretty cool. All right, let's get into some, as Dre calls it, some robust discussion.
That's right.
In regards to Fantasmic's glorious return. So Fantasmic came back, and let's talk about, before we dive into like the comparisons between version 1.0 and 2.0, let's talk about the return and how that went. Now, Vash, you were recently at the parks, and we had a great time on Monday together, man. That was a lot of fun. You spent several days there, and you were able to check out Fantasmic, right?
Yes.
What are some takeaways from the return, of this Disneyland legend?
Classic. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It was pretty incredible. It's pretty incredible to see Disney returned to this kind of large-scale theme park theatrical production that is, Fantasmic and a couple of other shows. I mean, it really is kind of really a phenomenal thing. It takes, as we were discussing before the show, it takes a lot of people to actually do this, right? It takes, I think the cast is well over 100, in terms of technicians, definitely crowd management cast members, and actual performers themselves. I mean, you're talking a pretty sizable crew, and from what I could tell, from what I could see, everything was basically back. Murphy the Dragon obviously was raising and lowering inconsistently, of course, as these things go, but she was breathing fire. She was the fire effects were all kind of working there. And as far as any differences from when it last showed back in 2020 or even before then to now, it looked like the same version of the show. From what I understand, they did change out the mist screens, right, that the projections actually project onto, and they look pretty good. Very clear image, but they're tall now, which is nice, as we'll get into in a moment. But from what I could tell, there might have been some technical upgrades. The projections looked very bright, very clear, and not just the ones on the mist screens themselves, but on the actual islands themselves, or actually on the island itself. It just looked really, really premium, as it always has, and that was really, really nice to see. Whenever these things come back, you worry about cuts, you worry about other alterations and changes, but it seemed to be kind of the same show. I will say the one biggest change is how to view the show. And OG, I think you have a photo there. You'll see people waiting in standby on the side there, but that kind of cleared out area right there that you're seeing that group of cast members actually speak in, that right there is dining package viewing, both from Riverville Terrace, Hunger Bear Restaurant, and soon to be Blue Bayou. Actually, they haven't announced those packages yet, but from what I understand, those are coming. And from what I could see, they have dedicated around 70% of the available viewing along the river to just dining packages, and some primo spots as well. I mean, anybody who'd want to see the show from those vantages, at this point you got to pay up, and that was a very surprising thing, because we've seen monetization of shows before, but this one really surprised because it's never been to this extent historically.
That's interesting. Casual, what are your thoughts on this? On this kind of like this monetization of Fantasmic, essentially, where basically all the seating that's worth anything has been monetized. What are your overall thoughts on that?
I don't blame them for doing it. Number one, it's obvious that Fantasmic is a tremendous show. Like Vash was saying, there's dozens upon dozens of cast members and technicians involved in it that all need to get paid. There's lots of effects and upkeep that needs to happen. So by giving something like that away for technically free, if you will, with the cost of admission, I can understand why they would say, how can we make some money off of this? What I don't like is, again, to me, it feels like it's the Genie Plus situation where the price point is a little too much in range for too many people. It's a little too tempting, and therefore they need to block off way too much from the people who either choose not to pay for that or simply can't afford to pay for it. And again, just like Genie Plus, I would rather see a smaller section roped off, but at a real premium, and then make it a premium offering, with seating, not, I mean, you're paying that kind of money and then you still have to sit on the cobblestones,
right?
So I'd rather they charge, make it a little more extravagant, but then give a actual premium product in its place.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that was a really good like kind of comparison to the Genie Plus thing, because we've said on the show many times too, like it's too cheap. You got to make it like Universal actually does it right, where they charge more. So when you do pay that, your experience is better. And I think that definitely, like to your point, Casual, is relevant in terms of this too. You know, I think it'd be much better off like raising the price, make it much more of a premium experience. You can shrink that viewing area, and it would just be better all around. Yeah, like you, Casual, I don't really blame them for monetizing. And in a weird way, the silver lining of them monetizing shows like Fantasmic is that it actually incentivizes the executives in Burbank or whatever, or Team Disney Anaheim, to keep these shows around and to constantly throw money at them, right? Like, so if there's a monetization element to it, the executives, the suits, are going to be much more inclined to like take care of that. Look, there's a reason why that the Disney bars are usually the best part of a lot of these lands, because they know they're making money hand over fist. There's a reason why Olga's Cantina is so badass, right? They put so much love into that with the Rex DJ and all that, because they know, like, hey, we're gonna make our money back. There's a reason why Lamplight Lounge looks better than all of Pixar Pier, because the alcohol element and the monetization, right? So I think it all plays into this, where it's like, okay, if they're monetizing these shows, it kind of secures these shows' place, right? And it incentivizes Disney to take care of said shows. That is a silver quite a bit. Make it a true premium experience. It even kind of goes to like the Magic Key and the annual passes with the monthly payments, right? Like, it's too accessible sometimes, and it causes issues. So what do you think, Dre? Like, you think that like this monetization element, like, you agree with Casual, it should be a little higher than what it is, or where are you standing?
I think Casual makes a good point. I do agree with it. I would like to see maybe a little bit less of this of these dining packages. A little bit less impact on these shows' viewing areas, because I mean, we're talking about like 4,000 people in that shot right there that can probably sit down in those in that area. I mean, it's a significant amount of the available seating of the show. So yeah, I do agree. I think you can monetize them. That's fine. In fact, there has been kind of monetization practices before, but never to this extent, like I said.
Right.
There's always been, even with Fantasmic at Disneyland, there's always been like, dessert packages and stuff like that you can get and so forth. And I really wish I would have embarked on that when it was up there on the veranda of the now, what is it, Dream Suite. That would have been pretty cool. But c'est la vie. This is what it is. It's just, this is a lot. And I think I agree with Casual that, yeah, if you're going to monetize it, fine, but maybe not to such a grotesque extent. And
right.
Yeah, I mean, charge a higher price, make it a really premium offering. I think that'd be really cool, and it'd be really cool for everybody. It's interesting, what you say, OG, about, reinvestment and all that. Just to go off track a little bit here, but definitely it's related. World of Color just came back as well, and I guess Scott Gustin, talked to Jennifer McGill, who is the producer of the original World of Color back in 2010, and was able to kind of pick her brain and ask her about that show, which is also being monetized, interestingly enough. And he asked her, hey, if there's one thing that you could possibly change about the show, what would you do differently maybe today that you didn't do before? And her answer was the maintenance process for the stage itself. Obviously, that show has had a particularly troublesome run. But here's what he had to say. The stage platform is nearly 1 acre and can be raised and lowered in 3 different levels: performance, underwater, and maintenance. Miguel said if doing it over, she would instead choose to keep the platform in a static position and raise and lower the water level in the Paradise Bay Lagoon. Well, to your point, OG, if you're monetizing these shows, maybe not necessarily to the extent that Fantasmic is, but if you are monetizing them and C-Suite sees that and says, hey, maybe these things are worth, investing in only to get that monetization out of it. Maybe we could see changes like that going forward. Huge capital expenditures that you necessarily wouldn't, placed onto these shows, but now that they're revenue generating opportunity, a direct revenue generating opportunity, maybe you do that now. So it is kind of this, kind of interesting thing that we're seeing here. I'll say this: I think demand for this show in particular is very, very high, which is why they're doing this. So they might adjust those things as time goes on, as demand kind of wanes, or as things change. Maybe a new show pops up somewhere else that collects all the attention. So we'll see how this story develops. But it's a fascinating thing. This is definitely Chapek's Disney, as we'll get into a little bit later. This is Chapek's Disney now, and this is how it rolls. And we're all along for the ride, I guess. We're
all on for the ride, and it even kind of like touches upon, because Casual mentioned Genie Plus, but I mean, even that, like when you're talking Genie Plus, now you've monetized attractions, right? Again, like the silver lining to monetizing attractions is that now Disney has a monetary incentive to create these better experiences, because they want you to buy into the experience now. Before, there was really no incentive. I mean, yeah, they get the admission ticket, but outside of once you're in the park, there's really no incentive from the suit, for the suits to sort of like, okay, well, why am I going to give you Indiana Jones? Once you're in the park, you're in the park. Well, now there's an incentive to give an Indiana Jones adventure, right? Because now if you build that Indiana Jones adventure or that Rise of the Resistance, you can charge big money for that Genie Plus Lightning Lane access. And again, I know a lot of fans don't like the microtransactions. I don't either. I don't like spending money if I don't have to. But there's no denying that it does incentivize the executives into creating better experiences, because now there's that monetary reward if people buy into it,
Yeah, where they got to be careful though, and where they're learning on the fly, is what's that breaking point where you've annoyed enough people to where they're like, I'm going to Knott's Berry Farm, I'm going to go to Cedar Point, I'm going to go to Universal, I'm not going to go to the Disney parks because it's stressful and I just feel like they're squeezing every nickel and dime out of me every time I want to go on a ride, every time I want to see a show, all these different things. And they've really got to be wary of that, because they could be burning through a lot of goodwill to the casual visitor instead of those super fans. And you need those casual visitors who, pop in and enjoy their day and go back and tell their friends, we had such a great time. Instead of, we went, but man, if you go, make sure you bring, a few extra $100, because when you get there, in order to ride things, you're going to have to spend another $100 for your family to go on it.
That's a very valid point. And I actually have, on a personal level, not with theme parks, but like in the video game world, like, I have an iPad, and I used to love playing Angry Birds. And I would love playing that game. It was great, right? It's like you just pick it up and play it. Really easy stuff. It's not Halo or anything. You got to learn all this stuff. It's just you just pick it up and play it. Then whatever company that does Angry Bird, I don't remember what the name of it is, but they decided.
Rovio.
What is it?
Rovio, I believe it was.
Rovio, that's right, Rovio. They decided it was a great idea to like microtransaction the shit out of this game. So now you can't even play it. Like it's unplayable unless you're sitting there with your credit card next to you the whole time. And I gave up on it. And a game that I previously really, really loved and would play religiously, I never even touch it anymore, because I'm not going to sit here and play $5 for this package, $5 for that package, And that's what they're kind of doing with the Disney parks, like to your point, Casual, where it's like these microtransactions, right? You're annoying people where they're like, well, I don't even want to deal with it. This is how I was with Angry Birds. I used to play it all the time. Now I never play it because of that. So you're right. That's a huge risk. That's a massive, massive risk.
But OG, I mean, you don't like the additional choice that you get, the additional flexibility that you get, OG? I can't believe this. This is, no, I mean, and to hear these executives kind of write that whole thing off, it's like, you guys, the casuals credit. I mean, it's like the breaking point is coming. Yeah. And these microtransactions that we're seeing within the parks, I mean, I mean, they make great, financials like sense for the quarter, but where are you going to be 5 years from now? I mean, and it's definitely starting to affect how people perceive the parks, how people think about the parks, and what adjustments that they'll be making to their vacations as a result of that. And it's like it's little stuff too. I mean, I know for us and our family, we would have liked to have gone to Disneyland. You know, one of the final days of our trip, we only had 3 days scheduled. We'd like to go for 4 now, and reservations kept us out. And then we kind of thought about it more, and it was like, you know what? Maybe it was better that we didn't go, because those tickets are, you know, so expensive, and then, you know, there are costs, you know, inside. Might as well go to Knott's, you know. And it was that kind of like, oh my gosh, you know, Disney may have lost out on you know, potential revenue even from us, you know, visiting the resort, like we do, simply because the perception has changed. And I think Disney has to be cautious of that.
Yeah, when you said choice, you know, they give you choices. That's not what families want. Families want choices like, which ride do we go on first?
Right.
They don't want to sit there and decide, do we get a full dinner or do we just live off a snack so that we could go on this other ride?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, those aren't the kind of choices families enjoy making.
Right.
No, that's 100% casual. You hit the nail on the head so hard with that one, dude. That's 100%. Yeah. Do we live on snacks or do we actually get a meal? And that's the other thing with the whole, like, you know, dining stuff, man. Like, you go on the Disney, you go on the Disneyland app. Try to go on the app the day of, and see how many sit down restaurants you can get. You can make a reservation for.
Impossible.
It's not going to happen.
Impossible.
You know, it's not going to happen. You know, and look, there's a lot of places that don't require that. Like Dre, you and I, we ate at the Hungry Bear.
Yeah,
when we were there. Hey, dude, the burger I had was like freaking obnoxious, man. It had tater tots in it, bacon, cheese. It was phenomenal. I'm not talking any crap about Hungry Bear. I love that place. But I mean, sometimes you just want to sit down and have a nice meal, right? Like indoors and whatever. And you can't do that if you're going to go to the park and you want to go sit down, like say Lamplight Lounge. You can't make that reservation day of.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
It's
our last trip, we left the park and went to Tortilla Joe's.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean,
it's easier. It's a less stress, and you get away from the crowds for a little bit.
Yeah.
And and not to mention, like I said, you can't get the reservations. So
yeah,
can't get them. You can't get them, and it's becoming a real problem, which is why, you know, OG, I guess we were talking a little bit before about this, like, man, need another restaurant. You need a couple more restaurants. You know, Disneyland's stacked as far as attraction goes, and you have all those capacity for, you know, to saturate as many people as possible because of those attractions, but you don't necessarily have the restaurant capacity in order to, you know, allow people to come in. And you know, I mean, it's like, you know, Carnation Cafe, I think or Cafe Orleans, you're talking about like what, maybe $15, $25, $30 an entree, somewhere around there. Right. And then you get Blue Bayou and it's like 50 and up. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. You know, that's we need a little bit, you know, can we get some restaurants in the Delta there, and provide a little bit more, you know, a little bit more capacity for people to actually make dining reservations on the day of. So many times do I see, you know, empty tables and stuff like that because they are so structured in the way that they're doing it now, and it's just no reservations at all. It's operationally, I would definitely agree that Disney parks, they gotta work on some stuff. That's no question. No,
they do. Absolutely. So let's dive into some comparisons here for Fantasmic 1.0 versus 2.0. This is interesting, and we touched upon this. It's really hard. At least for me, it's very hard to separate myself from 1.0 because it's so wrapped up in my childhood. I remember as a kid in my room with my sister, we would act out Fantasmic with flashlights and stuff. And it was just like, it is such a childhood memory for me that the Fantasmic 1.0 is canon. It's total canon. 2.0 is kind of like, you know, Solo, a Star Wars story, right? It's okay. Technically, it's canon, not really, you know. And so that's kind of how I feel, you know. But like, casual, I'm going to start with you in terms of like some main takeaways in regards to Fantasmic 1.0 versus Fantasmic 2.0. What are your overall thoughts? You know, kind of the good, the bad, the ugly. Where you kind of stand with these two shows?
Well, Fantasmic 1.0, I always viewed as absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
There was nothing that you could change that, or there were no spots that were so weak that you say, gosh, they really needed to do something different there. everything flowed well. The pacing was done perfectly. Most of the transitions from one scene to the next made sense and you could follow it. With 2.0, it just feels like it was, okay, we've got to get Aladdin in there. We've got to get Tangled in there. We've got to get Lion King in there, and then the biggest flaw that they did with 2.0 was they crammed in Pirates of the Caribbean.
Right.
That was every time I see that one, when I hear the cheers for Barbossa's face, I'm thinking, no, don't cheer for this. Don't cheer for this. You should be booing, hissing, turning your back, and letting the boat go by and not even watch. That's how bad I think that scene is compared to the Peter Pan version.
Yeah.
But as far as the upgrades in technology, amazing. The fountains, the mist screens, even the more judicious use of fireworks, because I remember 1.0, there were times where the fireworks were going off and then you can't see anything for a good 25, 30 seconds. It was literally just a smoke-filled lagoon at that point. So they do the fireworks better. They don't cloud the stage the way they used to. And like I said, the projections, everything is just so amazing with the technology, the way it's advanced. That's where I give 2.0 kudos in that, you've really stepped up that. The visuals look amazing. I just don't agree with some of the thematic and continuity choices of the show itself.
Casual, you bring up a fantastic point when it comes to Pirates versus Peter Pan. The problem with Pirates is the scene itself isn't terrible. It's creepy and cool. It's awesome, right? But I agree with you. I would much rather have Peter Pan there. Keep it the old way. Keep it Peter Pan. If they wanted to have the synergy of the pirate films, give Pirates and Jack Sparrow its own kind of show separate from Fantasmic. You want to bring up a Columbia, maybe, in between Fantasmic shows, and they can do like a pirate show on the lagoon or on the Rivers of America on its own thing. Oh, I would love that. That's dope. I mean, it's not a bad segment. It just doesn't belong in Fantasmic. Peter Pan was much more fitting. And it's weird how the whole show is animation. And then you got this one scene that's all live action.
That's exactly it. It completely pulls you out of the show at that point. You feel like, what just happened? Did everything change? It really distracts you from the whole idea of Mickey's dream.
Yeah.
Because it's like, it's Mickey. He should be kind of dreaming about the animated features. That's just how it feels. And when you throw in Pirates of the Caribbean, it's so jarring to me that I'm out of the show now. No,
100%. What do you think? What do you think, Dre?
Oh yeah. The pirate segment, it got. I don't want to discourage you, Casual. I do, but it got a lot of cheers this time, obviously, with some of the additional drama attached to one of the premiere characters in Pirates of the Caribbean. But
for that, yes, you should cheer.
Yeah, exactly. Right, exactly. And I was cheering alongside him, to be fair. But so that was pretty cool. But yeah, it's man, you got the Keira Knightley, kind of impressionist, in your ear, Jack, and it's a little dark, so you can't really see the choreography on the ship very well outside of the Keira Knightley, actress, to for lack of a better word, and Jack Sparrow. Like, you can see them just fine, but everybody else is like, what's going on? Like, and the projections on the island itself with the cannons and everything like that, that's kind of cool, but it's still, I mean, it lacks far behind, I think, the Peter Pan segment for sure. And to your point, OG, if it was on its own thing, that would be kind of cool. But
yeah,
in the context of Fantasmic, knowing what we previously got, it's like, this doesn't quite maybe work out maybe as well as they intended. I know the original effect was going to be, where you had projection mapping on the actual boat itself and people stepping into moonlight and stuff like that and showing their skeletal facades, and it was supposed to be pretty cool, but apparently they never got those effects kind of to work, and now we're kind of left with a segment that's maybe not as good as it could have been, and definitely not as good as it was with the previous version. I mean, it definitely hurts it. There's no question about that at all. And then they left in stuff that was kind of like puzzling, like the Ursula segment, for example. I would have thought that the Ursula segment would have been one of the first things maybe removed, because obviously, as you know, with Fantasmic 1.0, at least when it premiered, you had that Ursula inflatable that we didn't last super long, right? We had Flotsam and Jetsam at one point go across, but by that time, those effects were kind of done with. And now we still have an Ursula segment, but it just kind of like, that's kind of weird. That was kind of maybe the weaker part of the show, and yet we've retained it. Other additions, look, I kind of like the Tangled inclusion in there. The music is a little, it's growing on me, but it's still kind of weird. Well, I mean, yeah, the music, okay.
The vocals sound like it's American Idol tryouts.
Right.
They're doing all these little all the little wavy stuff and up and down, and it's like, stop with the gimmicks.
Yes.
That's how it feels to me. It's just
it's a little overperformed, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it's the female vocalist is maybe a little bit too strong for that song. It just.
Well, I was noticing that the two voices, there's no contrast. They almost sound too similar, and it's like, well, no, you need to find two voices that go well together but are distinct from each other.
Right.
And that's one thing that I've noticed with that is I almost can't tell when it's a different voice.
Yeah. Yeah. That's actually a pretty good observation there. Again, they went with this kind of arrangement that, like I said, it just doesn't quite fit that segment. I like Tangled being included in there. I know a lot of people will say, well, yeah.
Well, with the Tangled segment, what I saw somebody online, I think it was years ago even.
Sure.
They were like, why don't we have drones carrying lanterns up?
Ooh.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, you need maybe 25, 30 and have them rise behind the trees back there. It would be an absolute stunning moment. But no, they went with the easy way out and just did the projection mapping, and that's all you get. Fantasmic should have had the drones, something like that, to have you those serious wow moments of, where it just really hits you and you're completely enveloped by the stories and the songs.
You're right, Casual. Really cool. And the thing is, Tangled is a property that really does kind of fit into that. Like, you could tell me, like, if I didn't know any better and you told me Tangled was part of the Disney Renaissance, I'd totally believe you. It's in that realm, It definitely feels like it would be part of Fantasmic. It feels like it's part of that whole thing. But the execution, though, like you said, the drones with the lanterns would have been gorgeous, perfect. Also, this is kind of, I want to get your guys' take on this, because I think this might be playing into the Peter Pan thing a little bit. Dre, do you feel like, and then I'll go to Casual, but do you feel like the Peter Pan segment is kind of doomed to never return because of the social issues connected with that movie? There's a lot of people out there that think the movie is very problematic. I think even on Disney Plus, I think you have to, it's not included in the parental controls. Like if you're set on kids mode, I guess Peter Pan isn't in the library.
Oh, really?
From what I understand, it's not included. So it's seen socially as a problematic film. Does that kill its chances of returning? Are things changing? Where do you stand with that? Then I'll go to Casual.
It's kind of weird because it seems like the company definitely has a love-hate relationship with that film. Now, it's kind of a strange thing because Tinkerbell was like the biggest character ever for so long. I mean, she had her own series of films, right? The attraction itself is still one of the most popular in every single Disney park around the world. And yet, we get little digs at it like Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, as we all know. It's kind of it's a little strange. I don't think it's doomed necessarily to not come back because of those reasons, that segment never featured any of the any of the more problematic choices from that film, right? So I don't think it's necessarily doomed back. It not, or I should say, doomed to come back because of that. I would more strongly, go to like, obviously you have to cut up some audio in order to make that work. Maybe redo some lighting, but the crocodile, from what I understand, is gone. So, does that make a return and so forth? I don't think it's impossible, but I think we're a long way away from it. Hey, look, it would have been interesting if Johnny would have otherwise lost that case, or maybe some facts come out that maybe didn't, re-erect the star power in the way that we saw. Because now you would have had two problematic things. Now what do you do? But people, unfortunately, casual, they're screaming for that, Johnny Depp, Jack Sparrow moment. It's I think it might be living with us for a little bit, but I would like to see some of these other things return, obviously.
Yeah, 100%. Casual, what do you think? Peter Pan, is it something that you feel like Disney might be like, ooh, man, that's a problematic kind of IP right now? Considering the landscape, you think that's kind of like working against it, or maybe not so much?
I think the change was made simply for the popularity of Pirates of the Caribbean. I don't think it was, oh my God, we got to get rid of Peter Pan because, we're going to have the mob coming after us. It was simply, that to me looked like a, executive decision, not a creative decision. It was get pirates in there.
Yeah.
And the creators were like, all right, fine. That's how I view it. Whether it comes back or not, I don't know. It would just depend on, if there's a falling off of the Pirates franchise and it just becomes to where people actually have a distaste for it, and Peter Pan has a resurgence. If those two things happen at the same time, then there's the possibility of it coming back. But other than that, I think the Pirates franchise is where they want to, put their money, and obviously the fans love it. So.
Yeah, and also I think a big factor in that whole addition to the pirate segment was that they already had footage and everything from the World of Color segment. They already had projection footage for all that pirate stuff for World of Color. I think it does. Fantasmic's pirate segment does share some of that same imagery. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it was also kind of a cost saving thing. We can do the whole IP synergy thing. We got some projection film footage from World of Color across the way, throw that in there. And it was just kind of a recipe for,
Yeah. And I mean, almost all the stunts are basically the same thing, almost in the same order. So you just put on a different costume and, we'll put a new soundtrack over you.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It's pretty wild. Now, one thing that does bother me quite a bit actually about 2.0 is Mickey's constant, he constantly
wow.
Right?
Wow.
Yes. That bothers me. Like with 1.0, he doesn't do that. Like obviously Mickey is like the maestro, the whatever, the MC of the whole evening, but it's not like he injects himself into everything. Like he doesn't need to say the whole time, but in 2.0 he does that. It's like every scene, like somewhere down the road, like the show directors for Fantasmic 2.0 decided we have to remind the audience Mickey's here.
Mm-hmm.
And he's constantly
like the scene when the Lion King starts and you see his silhouette and he goes tromping down toward the side. I'm like, what? That makes no sense. This is dumb.
Yeah. It's stupid. That's my biggest. I can't stand that. I don't know why they did that. That was such a bad decision, and it's just he's constantly interjected into the show, and he didn't need that. Like in the first version of it, you understood. People are smart enough to understand this is Mickey's dream. It's very well established from minute one. You don't need to constantly have him popping up in all the segments. That was just a weird creative decision.
And he would show up at appropriate times, just to give you that reminder, but it was nicely spaced, right. And it felt appropriate for him to be there at that moment. It right. wasn't him walking into the Lion King. It wasn't him talking to the magic mirror, and it wasn't, just overdubbing, oh, wow, blah, blah. It just, it was, tastefully done.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like that there was a lot of that, with the Mickey, especially even just his entrance at the very beginning. I don't understand why they didn't use that moment of surprise the way it used to be, the build up to Mickey making his entrance. It used to be, you'd have that big ba-da, and there's the lights, and everybody looks up. And then the lights, the grids start coming up, and they're blinding everybody. Lights are moving. And I remember, I don't know if it was every time, but they eventually got it to where those lights would swing out and up, misdirecting your vision to follow these lights. And then boom, there's Mickey. And so it had that reveal of more than just boom, here's Mickey. There was nothing here. We had the lights right there, and now he's there. So it sets the tone for you're in for a lot of magic. Don't ever trust what you're looking at.
100%. And this really plays casual. You bring up fantastic points here today. Like, this really plays to the idea that a lot of the people that are currently at Disney, like Imagineering and like their show entertainment units, I feel like they don't understand how
what made the previous products work, maybe.
Well, yeah, and just story and framing things. Like I feel like Dre, we went on Haunted Mansion the other day, right, together. And we were amazed at how like it's Haunted Mansion's a very slow, methodical kind of like storytelling thing, right? It's not shoving the story in your face.
Right.
It's very, very subtle. There's little subtleties along the way. It's a very slow process, but it's very effective. Fantasmic 1 was sort of the same thing. It was sort of like it was showing you, it wasn't telling you, I think the entertainment crew and the Imagineers nowadays, instead of showing you something and building things up, it's we're going to tell you. We're going to tell you. We're going to tell you.
Yeah.
Look at the Nemo submarines. Look at the Nemo submarines. The whole freaking time. The writing on that is the most obnoxious attraction.
Yeah.
Nemo, where's Nemo? Nemo, where's Nemo? Nemo, where's Nemo? Nemo, where's Nemo? We know he's looking for Nemo. You don't need to constantly remind us he's looking for Nemo. It's obnoxious. And that's something that these new, younger Imagineers don't understand. Show us. Stop telling us.
It's kind of playing to the lowest common denominator, right? We're gonna
the
handhold
minion
you and stuff like that. And it's honestly, it's been an issue. I mean, going back some years, I remember back in the old Mice Chat forum days, talking to people who were like, "Man, I can't stand being handheld. I like my imagination to kind of take hold and to kind of provide my own story, so to speak, to these kind of things, and not necessarily be taken from one step to the other." I think some of those attractions work. I think Rise is the best example, right? Where it's like there is really a narrative that you're being put through, but even like in the case of like Indiana Jones, there's like a little bit of storytelling, but it's mostly abstract, and you're just going through this kind of consistent narrative. Haunted Mansion, obviously a great one, environmental, atmospheric storytelling, and it seems to be like even with Fantasmic 2.0, right? It's like, this is Mickey's imagination. You're gonna know it's Mickey's imagination. You're gonna get it. And it doesn't quite work. And I think a lot of people had the same problem, maybe to a different extent, between like Happily Ever After and Enchantment, right? Where they were trying to do maybe a little bit too much. So it definitely that is absolutely a thing, and I don't like it either.
I don't like it. I think we somewhere along the way we lost the subtlety, that subtle storytelling that's, I think, way more impactful. When you watch a show like World of Color, for example, in my opinion, some of the best moments in that show are the ones that they're not in your face with every effect in the lagoon, like just bombarding you. It's sometimes just the little things, like that Little Mermaid segment with the blue fountains, just doing this with the Little Mermaid in the background. And it's like chilling, dude. I get goosebumps. All it is blue. Literally, all it is a sea of blue fountains and the Little Mermaid theme. And it's more effective than some of the other scenes that are like just laser and prediction mapping and projection domes and this, that, and the other. You don't need all that sometimes. Simplicity sometimes is way more effective. And I think that the new creative teams nowadays, whether it be Imagineering, entertainment, whatever, they don't get it. They don't understand that. You don't need to throw everything in the kitchen sink at somebody to be effective. It's
True. I mean, it's interesting. One of my favorite segments from World of Color is actually Wally, and I would say that it's kind of something similar there. It's not a lot of effects, especially without the projection domes and stuff like that. But it's still very, very effective. What's interesting? One of the effects that we lost during Fantasmic 2.0 that I still am kind of upset about is the transition from the evil queen to the old hag. And I was like, oh man, what happened there? Why did we get rid of that one? Out of all these things that we added, took away from, that was a great effect.
Yeah.
It's just very weird design choices.
Yeah, I don't like that segment in 2.0 because in 1.0 you had Snow White as the final princess.
Right.
And so you had the idea that, okay, now the queen comes in. Why the queen is showing up? Because wait a minute, we got all this beauty going on. I'm not okay with this. Right. That was always her motivation, right? So you just had all the beauty, and so here comes the queen to come in and say, I'm not okay. I'm coming in to take over.
Right.
And so she comes in and she does her thing. And then if you remove that, there's really no motivation for the magic mirror to cast Mickey into the villain section. Yeah, whereas when the queen steps in, it's kind of like her intruding and taking over and gives a reason for Mickey to have to take the power back, if you will, to vanquish the evil. And then, not to mention, I can't stand that they put Mickey up at the top for that scene.
Yeah.
That top moment when he explodes and there he is as the Sorcerer's Apprentice, that should be the first time you see him live as the Sorcerer's Apprentice. Yeah, he's up at the top. He has just vanquished the evil. He is in command, and now he's just showing off. Yeah. That's how it should be.
Yes. Okay, if anyone at Disney is watching, you hire Casual to redo this show, okay?
Yeah.
That show, I saw that and decided I'm going back to school because I wanted to do that. So if you're listening and you want somebody to just give you a quick critique of telling you yes or no whether you should do it, hire me.
Okay, send the previs and the scripts over to Casual. Just a little review process, just a little, some notes. There you go. Exactly. We can make it a top tier show.
There we go. Incredible conversation. This is this whole Fantasmic thing is very, very interesting. Still a great show, but there are definitely problems with 2.0 for sure. They took the Mona Lisa and they tried to improve it, and that's a tough act to follow for sure.
Some of those art restoration goofs, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Some people who are like, "Ooh, I think the Mona Lisa looks kind of like this," and it's like, "Oh."
Yeah, they didn't quite draw a mustache on her, but
it's too much
stubble or something there.
Mm-hmm.
But let's pivot now to our next topic, which is the Lion King stage show. This new show that was supposed to premiere a few weeks ago. I think it was May 28th, over in the Fantasyland Theater, or as some people call it, the Wonder Bra Theater, that big vinyl tent thing, that is, over there in Fantasyland by the entrance to Mickey Toontown. But the show's been dark. The show has been dark. Now, Dre, you were there this past week, and I guess you and your family tried to go a few times. And
oh yeah, we were super excited to actually see it because we had been hearing about it, and we never got to see the show as it performed at DCA. And from what I understand, there were cuts eventually made of that show because obviously it didn't get the viewership that they wanted because it was outside, it was in the hot sun, and all those kind of things. But to have it, be restored. Not only that, but actually taken up a notch in a kind of a controlled theater setup. I mean, we were ecstatic. We were super excited to actually see some entertainment, back at Disneyland and in the Fantasyland Theater and all that. But it never showed. It never showed the whole time we were there, and it was stunning because it was like, wait a minute, didn't it just have, or was supposed to have its premiere back at on May 28th? Why isn't it showing while we are here, 1 week after its debut? It was It was completely bizarre. You asked a Gasulations cast member, "Hey, is there gonna be a show?" It's like no shows, and it's like, "Well, is it gonna premiere tomorrow?" Oh, we hope so. That was a very weird thing, and we couldn't understand why. Doing a little bit more research on it, from what I understand, apparently, the big speculation, or the thing that's being repeated, is that a good portion of the cast actually were diagnosed positive with COVID. So that may have precipitated, maybe putting that show on hiatus until the bulk of that cast could actually return to perform it. I think it's like a 10-day process before you test positive to when you test negative, and get back and all that kind of stuff. From what I understand, it might be showing now. I don't really know. Maybe I should have looked it up, before. But it was just kind of weird to have this kind of stretch where the show didn't premiere. I understand that obviously, we're still living in the era of COVID, so you have to have certain protocols and things like that. But it was I will say it was very, very bizarre. But also, as we had a little conversation before the show, which we can repeat for our viewers here, it shows maybe the priority that Disney still has in terms of handling this kind of COVID problem. So, Theme Park Casual, you were saying that maybe the unions might have also had a role in this.
Yeah, I remember way back when they first started reopening and things like that were happening. It was the entertainment that was one of the final things to come back, and
Right.
It was partially because the unions had stricter demands and regulations in place for performers. So I don't know if that plays into it. That that since it's a different union that we're dealing with, that they have to have stricter protocols and whatnot. But it seems odd to me because you still have plenty of other shows going on. And is this the only one that had any sort of an issue, or have there been other issues and the other shows have a backup crew, a backup, understudies that can come in and take over? It just seems really odd that this one show has been affected so tremendously to the point to where it's, basically gone dark. And there's plenty of other shows at the resort that have had zero problems. And we haven't had, I don't think there's been any other, performer or group or anything that has gone dark the way this one did. So
Yeah, I totally agree. And this Fantasyland Theater, these stage productions have had a history of stuff like this before. I remember multiple times during Mickey and the Magical Maps run that the performers were striking, or there was some conflict where they won Disney won 5 shows, maybe they won 3 shows as performers and stuff like that, and it was kind of a tug kind of a back and forth situation right there. But it is interesting, Casual. I mean, is this limited to this show? Does this speak to maybe problems maybe that's why we're not seeing Hyperion, because maybe rehearsals and performances are handled maybe in a similar way to maybe Hyperion Productions, and maybe that's why they're anxious. To your point, Casual, I haven't heard anything, even in Walt Disney World, about shows like this just going dark suddenly because of a COVID outbreak or whatever. If there was, would have heard about it. And it just seems like with this particular show, it's like, the bulk of the cast were out, and that's kind of weird. You would think, especially for shows like these, you'd have like maybe 2 or 3 rounds of performers in order to make up for that loss. But in this particular case, nothing was really told even to guest relations cast members as a result, and that communication just didn't happen with guests and so forth. It was a very bizarre situation for sure.
Well, yeah, and it could also come back to OG's point of the monetization of shows like Fantasmic,
right?
Where, and I hope I'm not stealing your thunder, but
no. I was just about to say, you're absolutely correct.
Yeah, with Fantasmic monetizing things, there's that extra incentive to have backups and be able to have them on call Whereas a show that is technically free, maybe they run with a lighter crew, and if there is something that affects a few people, all of a sudden that's enough to make the show go dark. And Disney, well, we're not making any money off of it, so why start hiring somebody else and training people and going through rehearsals again with new people? Maybe that's part of the issue.
So we need to monetize the Fantasyland Theater. Is that right? Or...
There you go.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
No, I think that's exactly what it. I mean, I think it's definitely a potential factor here, because I think that, like, look, I mean, like you mentioned pre-show, casual, that like if someone came down with COVID for Fantasmic, like they're not gonna. More than likely, Fantasmic will still go on. They'll find someone else, and the understudy or whoever, and the show will go on. This one, there's very little incentive for it to go on. There's no dining packages. There's no fancy, expensive viewing areas. The incentive just isn't there, So I think that's a huge factor in this. Absolutely. And the unions and all that too is definitely a huge factor as well. But I think all these things coming together is sort of what's going on.
Yeah, it definitely is interesting, and maybe it's isolated to this one show. Maybe it's isolated to the operations of the Disneyland Resort itself, because, like I said, I haven't heard really anything like this happening over at Walt Disney World with the number of productions that they have over there. But it's an interesting, fascinating case, because, obviously the Tomorrowland Skyline Lounge just re-premiered, right? And they tell you up front, hey, look, if we don't have performance of fireworks that day, that's just how it is. You're going to have to pay your $60 kind of thing, right? No refunds. And unfortunately, the last, I think, like week, there was a string of cancellations, so that sucks for them, of course. But it is interesting, like Fantasmic, like we were just talking about, with all of these dining packages that they have. What's the make good there? From what I understand, I believe on Thursday, the first showing of Fantasmic. Oh, oh yeah, there you go. You see, right there, no refunds. You know what? Bob Chapek, he'll even do you one further. He'll be like, hey, you know what? You know why we're not giving you a refund? Well, that's not for that. It's not for this time. Not for this time. We gotta tell you later. But look, you have Fantasmic with all these dining packages, right? $50 at Riverbell Terrace, $37 or so for Hunger Bear, and all that kind of stuff. And how much the river is taken up by these dining packages. What happens when that show doesn't play? I believe on Thursday, like 4 minutes in, the show stopped, and what's the make good there? What's the line at City Hall going to be like? It is kind of interesting how it's like you get into this kind of like, now that you start monetizing these things, the expectations go up considerably. And hey, maybe Lion King, as it was an included show with your theme park ticket, maybe it's like, okay, whatever, the show doesn't play today. But maybe not so much with some of these other monetized shows.
No, 100%. Yeah, you're right. The expectation and skin in the game, so to speak, once you start paying for something, and that's the big problem with Genie Plus.
Yeah.
You're shelling out $20 for the day or whatever it is. Sometimes the a la carte attractions like Rides of Resistance is $20 just for that ride, right? So there's more skin in the game for it. Like people, like now you're not talking about an attraction that came with my admission price. Now you're talking about something I'm paying extra for, and now I can't get on it.
Right.
So that's a huge problem, a massive problem. Now, we did have an issue, Vash and I, with the Genie Plus thing. Well, Genie Plus actually as a service worked really well for us.
Yeah.
But we got Splash Mountain, which, shut down for, I guess it wasn't working, because they haven't been maintaining it because, the retheme is coming. I mean, they won't say that, but we know that's the reason. I was at Disneyland twice last week, and on 2 separate days, and both times Splash Mountain was down. There's something going on with that attraction. I really do believe that they're really kind of letting it go a little bit because of that retheme is coming. But anyway, besides the point, but the attraction was closed. So we spent $20 on this Genie Plus thing, and now we can't get on the thing that we want to get on, right? It's like that. It's just like salt in the wound kind of, right? And a lot of people feel that way. It's like, I'm paying for something now. I gave you my money. I expect to go on this. I expect to see this show. It changes everything. It really, really does. I agree with you. And the city hall, I don't envy those people over there at all.
Oof, man, that's got to be a tough job right now. And look, you hit on a good point. People will put up with a lot of things if they perceive it to be free or included or whatever.
Right.
But if you're charging for it, now the onus and expectation goes up considerably. And in the case of Splash Mountain, they did do a make good. We were able to, ride that later that night and stuff like that. And they were able to scan our tickets and so forth, put that on, and it worked out fairly smoothly. But it is interesting. I actually heard of a case. I don't know if this is true or not, but I heard that one of the days that we were there, Rise of Resistance was going to stay open for a little bit longer in order to accept all of the people who couldn't ride it because it was down earlier that day for an extended period amount of time. Because it's like, hey, people paid to go on that, whether it be boarding passes or whatever else. People have kind of paid for this experience, and we had to make good on that.
Right.
It's just kind of fascinating as we get into this kind of monetization theory with the parks. What's the make good gonna be if you can't actually premiere these shows and so forth? But do we think, guys, that the Fantasyland Theater is long for this world? I mean, it's to OG's point, I believe he called it what, an eyesore. Yeah, I have to agree. It's not the best looking thing. It was started as the Videopolis a long time ago. Put the tent structure up sometime in the 90s. Do you think we see this in 5 to 10 years?
I hope so, man. I hope so. Look, we enjoyed the Fantasy Fair, I believe it's called, Princess something over there.
Yeah.
On the hub, right next to the castle, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
We saw that on Monday.
Royal Theater.
Fantastic show. Really good show. It's not an eyesore visually. It fits Fantasyland. It looks great. It was fantastic, well-written show. Perfect. Very intimate. Has everything. Checked all the boxes. The problem with the Fantasyland Theater is it's just a complete and total eyesore. You have this vinyl and metal monstrosity in Fantasyland.
Mm-hmm.
That's like everything else in Fantasyland is like this wood and very warm European old school village, and then you got this metal and vinyl thing. It's hideous. It's absolutely hideous. I hope it's not long on this earth. I hope they get rid of it. You can build a really fantastic dark ride in that spot. Now, I know a lot of my entertainment people are going to be like, well, what about entertainment? I think what you can kind of replicate what's going on over at the Princess Fantasy Fair thing throughout Disneyland. Very small, intimate stage shows to kind of replace the loss of that Fantasy Fair. I mean, that Fantasyland Theater. I mean, that would be my approach. Get rid of Fantasyland Theater. It's way too big. Put a ride there. And then maybe put like 1 or 2 small stages in Disneyland, and that kind of make up for the loss of the theater. I think that's the way to go. The vinyl tent and everything it's horrible. And you can even see it when you're watching the fireworks on Main Street behind the castle. It's hideous. Yeah. I don't know if it's worth keeping, because I think you can have just as great entertainment in the park without it on a smaller scale, like you do with the Fantasy Fair thing, and it would be much more effective and without the big giant eyesore. What do you think, Casual? I mean, in terms of the Fantasyland Theater, do you want to see it stay? Do you want to see it go? Where are you at with that?
Well, I love the idea of the larger productions, because it actually, to me, it helps instill love for theater into kids that normally wouldn't have a chance to go see a big Broadway style show. And the shows that they have there are just top notch. They really are well done. So I'd hate to see that aspect go, but I agree that it's oddly a small theater. When you look at the seating, it's not like a tremendous amphitheater or anything. It's actually pretty small. And to have, like you said, that eyesore for something like that, I don't know if it's worth it. But I would hate to lose, like I said, the bigger production type of shows, especially in the daytime. because Disney needs something like that, since they're not doing the big parades and things like that. They're doing the cavalcades and stuff like that. I really like the big production shows. I'd hate to see those go.
Yeah, I like the bigger shows, obviously, but I mean, Hyperion just does them so much better. I'd like to see an enclosed theater type structure, maybe not on the same scale as Hyperion, but maybe on the scale, like you said, casual of the Fantasyland Theater. I mean, if you can enclose that space, that'd be optimum. But I just, it's like they're kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. It's like we don't necessarily want to invest in this theater, but we also don't want to take it away. And it's like, you got to make up your minds, guys. We need something in here. My idea
if they could monetize it.
Yeah,
exactly. That they can monetize it. Oh, there you go. And then now we can actually get bona fide theater production in there. Hey, I mean, I would invite that. I'd also invite a restaurant because I do think Disneyland especially needs a little bit more restaurant capacity. But it's weird. It's kind of like a time. It's from a bygone era. But it's like, it definitely does have some, it provides some operational, benefits to Disneyland and to guests and so forth. By the way, you mentioned parades there, Casual. What do we think about Magic Happens? Do you think it's coming back? We think it's not? What are we thinking on this? I know it's kind of a question that, we just kind of sprung, but are we thinking it's coming back? I mean, does anybody have some love or attachment for that show, and anybody wanted to see it back, or what is your feeling on it?
I never got to see it live, so I don't really have much of an attachment, but I love the parades. Disney does parades better than just about anybody. The energy that they always have, the performers are top notch and give it their all, no matter how hot and crazy it is. I mean, like I said, I've never seen it live, but it seemed like an interesting parade at the very least. So I can't really say like, oh yes, I want it back so bad, but I would just love to have the parades happening again.
Yeah, I would agree with Casual in the sense that I love the daytime parades. I love parades in general. I was like, we saw the electrical parade a few weeks ago, and that was like, wow. I mean, just goosebumps. I mean, that whole thing was just incredible. I'm not a huge fan of Magic Happens, and the reason why, I mean, if it comes back, great, but the reason why I'm not a huge fan of this particular parade is just because I feel like they couldn't really pick a lane. Like, the music is Todrick Hall, super hip, kind of edgy pop music, and then the floats are very like old school traditional Disney. And it was like they couldn't decide what they want to do, right? And it just doesn't feel right. Like, if you're going to do a hip parade, look, I'm not against hip. At DCA, they had the Block Party Bash, which I was a huge fan of Block Party Bash. It was fun. It was hip and edgy, but they leaned into that. That was the lane that they chose, and they went with it, right? They just don't know what lane they want to be in with Magic Happens. You have the hip and edgy soundtrack with the traditional floats, and it just doesn't, in my opinion, it's jarring. It's very, very jarring. So I want a daytime parade. I think that Disney, though, can do better than Magic Happens. I really do.
So you're wanting Sleeping Beauty's dress. Pick a color.
Exactly. Pick a color, like just pick a lane and stick with it. If you want to do the whimsical, traditional Disney parade, do that. If you want to do the Block Party Bash, hip, edgy, whatever, do that. But you got to pick one. You can't like ride the middle. It doesn't work. It does. And this one, Magic Happens, really rides that middle, and it doesn't really satisfy either side. That's the issue.
Yeah, it's speaking of shows that have had premieres and didn't last very long, that's got to be like the shortest running parade ever. like right. I understand it. It happened to be complicated by factors outside of Disney's control, obviously, but it's just one of those kind of amazing things that this show. I mean, I remember out of all the D23 Expo announcements that everybody else got, the one thing that we got was this parade. They hyped the crap out of it, and we were actually excited to see it. And then all of it, I made it to Disneyland before the shutdown, but also before that, I got a chance to see that parade. I think it was only a couple months before the shutdown. Was able to see Rise of Resistance for the first time, and it was like, okay, well, we'll be back in June and we'll see it. And unfortunately, that never happened. Hopefully, we can get some of these other productions back, especially the Hyperion. I think the Hyperion really provides a lot of the actually the price of admission to California Adventure. I think is bulked considerably by the Hyperion's inclusion, and I think it hurts the whole overall valuation of the park, to be quite frank. So I'd like to see that. I'd like to see some parades come back, but overall, Disneyland Resort's been pretty consistently working towards getting back 100% operational, and it's good to see.
No, it is. It is. Now, what do you guys think? And this might be controversial because this is sort of like, this is kind of a like, it's a pricier option, but it might be a better quality option. What if they were to get rid of, say, the Fantasyland Theater, right? But then Downtown Disney were to add a theater where they would do like Cirque du LA productions and real broad. You can bring Broadway on, Lion King on Broadway kind of style shows into that theater. So you're getting a much more quality experience, but now you're going to pay an entrance to get into that show. Would you guys be okay with that in terms of like, like a Downtown Disney venue that's giving you like Broadway, really quality stuff? Or do you prefer kind of like maybe lesser quality, but like free with admission in the park? What do you think about that, Casual? Would you be okay with that? Or is that,
I personally, I'd prefer in park.
Okay.
Go with a slightly lower quality, but keep it in the park. And mainly because I don't know what the demand would be in Downtown Disney to have it to where it would be, financially viable. I mean, we saw, House of Blues get kicked out.
True.
So I don't know if the demand is there for something like that. I'd love to see, big shows like that as well. But if I'm putting on my Bob Chapek hat, I'd be like, yeah, that's not going to work for me.
Yeah,
and just from a financial standpoint.
There's a lot of valuable real estate in Downtown Disney as well, and it's all kind of at a premium. From what I understand, they're having problems packing out the Cirque du Soleil show in Walt Disney World at this current moment. From what I understand, they're having some attendance problems and so forth. So I don't know if the market's quite there. It'd be interesting to see, obviously. But I think I agree with Casual. I think the in-park shows, maybe a little bit lesser quality, I think is better. And honestly, like the Hyperion productions, they're pretty high quality. Like they're pretty they're impressive. I just sustainability wise, I just don't see it. As we've seen with Fantasmic and so forth, I think the monetization of the shows is definitely a thing that's coming. Yeah, and I think that's the direction that they kind of want to go in.
Interesting. All right, we got one more topic today that we're going to dive into. That's Peter Rice, the Peter Rice thing. I know we talked about this yesterday, but I really wanted to dive into this today. We got Casual on the show today, and I want to get his kind of perspective on this and kind of bounce some ideas, speculation, all that off of him. Casual, the news the other day that Chapek and the board fired Peter Rice. A lot to unpack here, but what are your overall thoughts in regards to that whole move by Bob Chapek and the board?
Yeah, it was kind of out of left field. I think I mentioned in a DM, boy, the morning got interesting real quick.
Yeah,
and having a few days to kind of hear different perspectives. I mean, it just really seems like it was one of those things where it's like, you're not the guy for us. There's things going on. We know what you're doing. I'm going to go ahead and relieve you of your duties. It seems like it's pointing in that direction of Rice was kind of already seeming to possibly be gunning for Chapek's job, right now, and maneuvering in different areas to do that. And so Chapek, another businessman, said, "You're out."
You're out.
And I think that's
And
what
there's-
you have to do when there are even rumblings of that. Because
Yeah, I was going to say, even if you have just suspicions of it, you're probably best off to just, kind of head it off. And, Disney isn't a small time operation. So you waiting 2 days could be the end of your career.
Right. No, 100%, 100%. And like, and we've had this conversation on social media and stuff where I think it was WDWNT had an article. They were saying oh, well, Bob Chapek fires Peter Rice because of what was it? He felt insecure about his job or whatever. But here's the thing. And I kind of respectfully disagree with WDWNT on this, because I don't know any business person. You own a business, right? Or you're a manager even of a department, and you have a single person that's actively trying to undermine you, actively trying to gun for your job. That person probably won't be around much longer. I mean, I don't know any manager, any business owner that would put up with that. And then to kind of sit back and expect Bob Chapek to sit back, oh, well, you're just insecure, man. Well, no, you're not. I mean, I don't know who would put up with that.
No,
It's crazy. It's crazy. Of course, he's gonna let him go. It's not that Peter Rice had ambition and wanted to be CEO one day. There's probably a line of people that work under Bob Chapek that had that same ambition. DeMauro is one of them. Dana Walden, who he just promoted, probably one of them. There's a whole laundry list of them. Sure. It's just the way that Peter Rice went about it. And Chapek, probably, to be quite honest with you, has intel showing that he was leaking to the press, working against him, actively working against him. And that's what triggered it. Because from what I read in the trades, Bob Chapek even encouraged Peter Rice in August of 2021 to renew his contract. He encouraged Peter Rice to do so. There must have been some news that something came to light recently about Peter Rice that Chapek didn't sit well with him, and he decided, you know what, this guy's got to go. He's got to go.
It's fascinating. You come for the king, you best not miss. That's kind of what it is. And apparently Peter, may have missed a little bit. Look, you can't allow that kind of stuff to occur, and you can't allow undermining and all that. I mean, look what happened. As soon as this happens, I guess the entire conversation was leaked. So it's I wonder who the leaker is. And apparently, as we alluded to before on this show, Peter Rice was asking for an explanation, and Chapek didn't give it. That's cold. But I think the intended effect was to have a chilling effect on the entire company and say, hey, look, you better get your stuff in line here. I ain't going to be taking this stuff. I ain't going to be held hostage like I was in April. This ain't going to happen. This is, this is the company under Chapek, and this is how it's going to be. I think it's kind of a fascinating thing that's happened here. Now, the speculation was, I guess Peter Rice also didn't play well with others, right? That he didn't necessarily coalesce with other divisions of the company, and obviously, Disney likes to spread its message out through its various verticals and so forth. And what he was doing in TV didn't have that synergistic quality. It's interesting. I asked myself why that might be. And I asked myself, was he attempting to compartmentalize and attempting to undermine utilizing TV, the television division within Disney to do that? It's interesting. You look at, for example, Anika Nani Rose just said recently on Ryan and Kelly, on TV that that Splash Mountain was coming, and it was coming in 2024. It didn't really seem like a traditional method of doing that. Was that a Peter Rice thing? Could it be a Peter Rice thing? Were these, maybe this division head was trying to influence how other operations run and the onus on them and so forth. It is kind of an interesting thing that these two things happen very close to one another. And I don't know what intel Chapek got, but I think he's onto something here.
Yeah,
Vash diving into the 4D chess stuff going on. Yeah. Taking all the angles. But I think it was Aaliyah that brought it up, that watching what the other heads of studios did differently than Chapek in the previous months could now be emboldening Chapek to say, you know what? No, I'm going to do it my way.
Yeah.
If I'm going to take heat, I'd rather take it for doing what I want to do than trying to follow along and please, this group or that group. So, yeah. And I'd rather see, it's like, if he's the leader, let's see what he's got. If he fails, then he fails, but let it be because of what he did, not because of how people were, nudging and influencing him.
100%.
Well, and that was one of the big issues with Chapek for the longest time, was that and we talked about so much on the show, where he was it felt very reactionary.
Yes.
Everything was like it was like, okay, Chapek came out and said, Disney's not going to be a political football. We're not going to comment on Florida politics. And then like 2 weeks later, it was like, okay, we're going to denounce the bill and we're going to work to repeal it. Right. Yeah. It was like, what? Like, you went from that to that, it was too reactionary. And with the ScarJo thing, it was very reactionary. I think Chapek is starting to kind of realize, look, I got my instincts. I got my business kind of whatever, the model. And I need to start like kind of digging my heels in a little bit here. I can't just sit here and react to everything. I gotta put my foot down, draw a line in the sand. And I think he's smart to do that. I think he's very smart to do that. I think he should have done that a long time ago, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And this whole thing, like you said, like the whole thing about like, Rice asked him, well, why are you firing me? And Bob Chapek wouldn't give him an answer. That was brilliant on Chapek's move, on his part, because if Chapek would have given him an answer, oh, that shit would have been leaked in 2 seconds. Oh, Chapek fired him for X, Y, and Z, right? The whole thing. It would have been all over the news, leaked like crazy. So Chapek, you know what? He's very smartly so, kept his mouth shut. You're not a fit. Goodbye. Short and sweet. That was the right move to make.
And it also would have signaled too, well, I'm firing him for this reason, right? And it would have told the other troops in line, it's like, oh, okay, well, if I don't do that thing, I should be okay. But now you don't quite know where the line is. And we're seeing some interesting moves across maybe social media platforms as a result. Alia, gotta give it another shout out to her. She's always on top of this kind of stuff. And, she was, forwarding some messages in the DMs suggesting that, Jennifer Lee, head of Disney Animation, may have deactivated her Twitter account, and maybe even Pete Docter is going in and deleting tweets. And, I think the intent was to have a chilling effect of the ranks, and you're seeing that play out in very, very interesting. See, there you go. You're seeing that play out in very, very interesting ways. And, I think Peter Rice is going to be one in a line of dominoes to fall here, and it's going to be interesting to see how this develops in the coming months, because I don't think this is the end of the story. I think it's the very beginning.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, and he's taking the bull by the horns. He's no longer going to be sit back seat and let everyone else decide where the car goes. Chapek is now a driver, and he's gonna determine what happens in the Walt Disney Company. And you might not agree with everything the guy does. I certainly don't. But at least he's going to be taking a much more of a leadership kind of position now, instead of a reactionary position. I think that's a smart move on his part. You got to let everyone know, hey, I'm the CEO here, right? Like, I set the tone. So if you don't like it, head on out. And
it'll be interesting. The other angle that I was thinking about was, so you have this random out of the blue firing, you have the board, issue that vote of confidence. All of this happening, is it normal for this to happen when all the indicators are going in good directions? When everything at the company seems to be on the proper trajectory? Or do you make these moves because you're noticing something that isn't right and you want to fix it?
Right.
Yeah.
That's where I'm curious. I mean, I know we've got a lot of the, personality, somebody gunning for his job or even, leaking things to undermine. Yeah, those are all good reasons, but is there something else going on that, again, Bob Chapek is privy to and is no longer going to be reactionary. He's going to get ahead of it and he's going to say, you know what, I saw this months ago. That's why I made all these moves. That's why we're heading in the right direction now. So I'm just curious if there are certain, rumblings. I mean, we saw what happened with Netflix. Are, Disney streaming numbers not quite where they thought they would be, post that quarterly earnings meeting. And now, with a couple more, a few more weeks of data, they're like, okay, we need to get things buttoned up now. So
no, absolutely.
Just a curious kind of a thing. I have no information about it or anything. It's just normally you don't do these kind of moves and make these kind of announcements if everything is just going swimmingly.
Right.
So
no, 100%.
And I think that's why Wall Street was kind of freaked out about it. It was just,
right.
it's signals uncertainty. It signals, there might be more problems just beneath the surface. And I understand the stock took all stocks.
Yeah, I was going to say it's everywhere, so you can't pinpoint it to just Disney having an issue. It's everywhere.
Correct. No question about it at all. But it definitely, I think it definitely says maybe things are not going right, and I think a lot of that has to do with culture. So when I hear the cultural reasons cited for Peter Rice's unceremonious departure there, I do agree with that a little bit. In IT, you have a saying, culture, not code, right? You can code in safeguards, you can code in all kinds of stuff, but really what's going to keep the operation running the best is the culture that you cultivate. Right. And I think that's I think it's a similar thing with Disney, right? I'll put it to you like this. There's this thing called the shopping cart theory, that if you have a population, like a community, right, and a large percentage of those community, residents or members, put back the shopping cart in that place in the parking lot where you're supposed to, right, and don't just leave it out there in these random places or in a parking space, right, then within that community, crime will go down, or be below a certain level or threshold. The community will be, there won't be litter, trash, and there's just less things you have to worry about because the culture is kind of on board with that. Right. Shopping cart is kind of a good indicator for that because there's really no incentive to do it, right? There's no benefit that you get, right? There's nothing that's reciprocated because of it. It's just the right thing to do. And I think Disney right now is filled with a lot of people that maybe not necessarily are looking out for the company's best interests, and maybe not looking out for, what's in the best interest of the company, what maybe the right thing to do is. And I think this is going to be a cultural realignment here, and it's going to be fascinating to see. By the way, fellas, do you hear that right now? Do you hear that? Just listen closely. Yeah, I think that's. Yeah, that's Chapek walking down. He's snapping necks right now across the hallway. It's looking bad out there.
No, exactly. We got Chapek over here. He's let me see here. He's Vader in the village.
Vader in the village, yep. Right?
Vader in the village. Just,
Yep.
No, exactly. Chapek. Something happened with Chapek. He decided, like, you know what? I'm not gonna be a backseat driver anymore. I'm gonna take control. And look, it'll be interesting because there have been a lot of leaks about the Walt Disney Company, C-suite in particular, all the inner workings of Disney. Now let's see. They fired Peter Rice. Let's see how many leaks there are now.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
If the leaks drastically drop, then who he was the leaker.
Yeah, I think. Disney took a real big hit in various media circles, but definitely with right-leaning media in particular. They took a huge hit, and I think the public or the public perception of Disney has gone down as a result of that by pretty big double digits. I think it was up in in the higher 70s, and now it's in like the 40s. I mean, there's definitely things that can be improved on. There's definitely things that, as far as the company and how it's perceived to the public can be improved on substantially. And, that kind of change has to come from within before it starts manifesting itself, on the exterior. And so I think Chapek was affected by what happened in the subsequent months. And I think he's looking to right those wrongs. It's going to be fascinating to see, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that was the one thing missing from Chapek was that a strong leadership,
The conviction,
right? It felt very much like he was like an employee and not a leader. Now with this Peter Wright thing, it sort of cements himself a little bit more, at least as the leader. I'm running this, so. It's fascinating. It's fascinating.
Now he just needs to put on a name badge, some Mickey ears, and go glad handing out in the parks a little bit.
Yeah, he does.
Michael Eisner style. There you go.
It's such an easy thing to do. I don't know why he doesn't do it more. He did it with Main Street Electrical Parade. We did a show on that, and he was great with the crowd. Chapek is going to be awkward. He's not going to be the slick, Bob Iger. This is not who he is. He's not going to be so slick tomorrow, But but Bob Chapek should lean into who Bob Chapek is. Like, it's obvious that Bob Chapek is like the dad joke guy, right? Like, he's the guy at the table telling the dad jokes. He's awkward. He's, be that guy, Chapek. Go out there and talk to people and be a human being. Do your dad jokes. Be awkward, but at least be there and be visible. And I think if he does that, that's one step more than Bob Iger did. I never saw Bob Iger at the parks unless it was a big opening with a lot of Hollywood celebrities around him.
I believe when it's fascinating you bring this up because it reminds me. I believe when Disney initially bought ABC and they had the Disney Sunday movie and stuff like that, and that was hosted by Michael Eisner at first. They were looking to try to get other people that might step into that role, but ultimately it just became, let's just make it Michael Eisner, whatever. And even he said at first he was horrible at it, and when you look at those kind of early broadcasts and so forth featuring Michael Eisner, he's a little stiff, he's a little nervous, a little bit he's not quite Uncle Walt, but he's kind of trying to be. It doesn't quite work, And then as time goes on, he does improve in that aspect greatly. And it's, sometimes you just gotta learn that by doing it. So I think if he does a little bit more, I think it will very much improve his kind of, stature and how he comes off, to the public and so forth. And we've seen little glimpses of that. I think, what was that event that he had that he attended where he was up there and he had the jacket off and he was kind of telling jokes and stuff like that.
The Jungle Cruise premiere at the El Capitan.
Right, and it was actually
good. It was
kind of good. It was kind of decent. It was like, okay, there you go, Chapek. You do a little bit more of that. And again, I still contend, hey, at D23 Expo, have them attached to some big projects, have them announce some big things, inculcate that kind of fan goodwill, and right the ship a little bit, improve the brand image and get out in front of the public. I think that'd be a good thing.
Yeah, the Disney CEO position is a little weird. It's the fans. I think I mentioned on Twitter, the fans expect you to be the Uber fan, just like them. Right. You need to know all the ins and outs. And it's tough because most of us kind of view it as you're walking in Walt's footsteps.
Right.
You're in command of his baby. And if you do something wrong, people take it personally. So you need to be aware of that. And like you said, make an attempt to be part of that fandom, and learn as you go.
Yeah.
No, 100%. And I think some candor would go a long way with Chapek. I think if he got on that D23 stage and said, "Hey, look, I'm not always going to be your favorite guy. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm not always going to make a decision that you're going to love, but I promise you this. I always will act in the best interest of what's best for the Walt Disney Company, and just have that candor with your fans. And I think that would go a long way. Just let fans know, hey, I care about this company as much as you do. And we might not always agree, but at the end of the day, I'm working for what's best for the company,
Yeah.
And I think that would go a long way. He needs a moment like that. He really get off the teleprompter, Bob. Get off the teleprompter and just speak to people You know, I told Dre this many times on the phone. Like, obviously, Bob Chapek, he's got a wife, he's got kids. I want the Bob Chapek that's at the dinner table with his family.
Yeah.
You know, that real father figure, that real human being. Bring that to D23 Expo. Bring that Bob to the Expo. Get off the teleprompter and the scripted bullshit and just be a real human being. And I think it would go a long way. You're not going to win everybody over. There's some people that will always hate you, and you're just going to have to deal with that. But I think that you can make a lot of progress, though, if you were to kind of get a little more real. That's a big problem he has. He needs to get off that corporate speak.
Yeah, needs to be a little bit more relatable, a little bit more sympathetic. I agree.
Yeah. It's going to be a very fascinating, next few months. I mean, look, February 2023, that's his renewal date. I know Blog Mickey, our friends over at Blog Mickey, they're saying that they're hearing inside sources that Chapek will be his contract will be renewed this summer, is what they're hearing. See what happens. I'm kind of thinking that's probably going to be the case, though. I really do, but
I think Ollie and I were speculating post show, last show, that might be the case. That a CEO change would likely not come before the expo, but what would likely come is if they're going to renew him right before. That way, that's all handled and settled, and the announcements that they make at D23 Expo have their own time to shine. That kind of thing, and don't cast a large shadow over everything. So I think it's pretty likely.
Yeah, 100%. It's gonna be very, very interesting how it all pans out. We'll see how long they renew it for. Is it 1 year? Is it 3 years? A 5-year deal? Disney tends to do. I think even with Bob Iger, it was like renewals in like 3 or 4 year increments.
Right.
So he'll probably get like another 3-year extension. And then we'll see if he renews after that. I don't know. Because there's a lot of superstars at Disney. Dana Walden now. I mean, Dana Walden, he just bolstered her credibility like through the roof by giving her this role. She might be a contender for CEO in 3 or 4 years. Who knows? And Peter Rice might even be, and that's one of the things. That's one of the points I made in the video, the last video we made about this, is that just because he's not at Disney doesn't mean he's not a rival to Chapek. Tom Staggs left the company years ago. It's possible he becomes the next CEO. You don't know. A lot of times these candidates come from the outside anyway. So it doesn't necessarily mean just, there's no like prerequisite that they have to work at the mouse to become the CEO. Michael Eisner didn't.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
So.
And sometimes you like that outside blood because it kind of gets, you're not always fixated on what was, but now you're maybe doing some different stuff that could be a benefit to the company, as it was in Michael Eisner's case and so forth. So we're gonna have to see. Look, I think Chapek, I don't think is in the most envious position right now, obviously. But I think this is one big step in getting to that point, in making the company his own and making decisions for himself and getting rid of the people who are attempting to undermine him. I think it's a really important thing.
No, you had to. If he's got information, which he probably does, to be quite honest with you, that people are undermining him, then those people need to go. This is a team effort here, and look, no one's saying if you're working at Disney, you can't have ambitions to eventually become the CEO. Mm-hmm. Nobody is saying that. I mean, if Chapek was going to fire everybody that has ambitions to be CEO, then Dana Walden would be gone. Damara would be gone. He'd fire everybody. They all want to be CEO eventually, I think. But I think that with this in particular case with Rice, it was more than the fact that he just wanted to be a replacement of Chapek. He was actively undermining, trying to weasel his way in. That's the difference.
And I think he was doing real damage to the company. You used that airplane analogy earlier, OG. Like, hey, look, Chapek, for all his flaws, for what he is, whatever, he's still the pilot of the plane. Right. And, we're still on the plane, and I don't want somebody in the back, cutting the fuel lines just to see him fail, because guess what? If he fails, we all fail.
Right.
It's like, come on, guys, let's go here. And I think people like, people like Peter Rice, I think we're doing real damage to the company because they want to see Chapek fail, and that has to end, because it's like, at the end of the day, it's still the company. It's still, there's a lot of jobs that are impacted by it. There are a lot of things that are impacted by it. And I don't want to see necessarily the company fail, but just because I don't like the CEO who's in charge. if in fact he's making decisions that it is hurting the company, then yeah, you can go that route, right? In terms, not undermining, but in terms of getting him out of there.
Right.
But attempting to sabotage, well, that's a whole different story.
Whole nother story.
Yeah.
Whole nother story. Well, to my hour and 39-minute crew, thank you for watching today. We had a fantastic conversation. Casual. It was really great having you on, man. We'll have you on again very, very soon, talking some Disney parks, some Disney, corporate stuff. And it was really a good time having you on, brother.
No, thank you again for having me. I enjoy it. You guys have been an inspiration, and it's always good hanging out with you guys.
We love having you on, brother. And if you can let everybody, if you can, kind of remind everybody where they can find you on, like, social media, on YouTube, all that good stuff.
On social media, you can find me on Twitter at Theme Park Casual, and on YouTube, channel name Theme Park Casual. So hopefully I'll be able to interact with all of you, and we'll see you around.
Absolutely. And again,
Theme Park Casual.
and again, I will link his YouTube channel down below in the description. Also on the end screens, there's a link at the very end for his channel. Definitely give this man a subscribe, support his work. He's a friend of the channel. He's a friend of OG55, and we definitely send all our love to him, and we hope you do too. So give him all the love in the world. And Mr. Vash Guy, producer Dre, host of Freshly Squeezed. If you can let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media, sir.
Best place to interact with me is going to be on Twitter at Vashka. It's right down there, just like it's spelled. And if you want to see me, well, it's going to be on the channel you're watching right now at Orange Grove 55 at Freshly Squeezed, your source for juicy news and info squeezed fresh right from the Grove. So that is where you can find me.
And I still love, man, I gotta remember to do that when you go Orange Grove 55, I love it.
That's cool, right? Yeah.
That is so good, man. That is so good.
It works. It works. Hey, it's those little things. Oh yeah, 55. I got it.
But everyone, thank you for watching, and comment down below with all your thoughts on this Peter Rice drama. I know you guys have, opinions on that. Fantasmic. We talked a ton about Fantasmic, the monetization of Fantasmic. We talked about 1.0 versus 2.0. We dove into the Lion King stage show at the Fantasyland Theater. We even dove into some Disney dining, all kinds of stuff today. It was a really, really good conversation. Comment down below with all your thoughts. We would love to hear from you. And as always, have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Sector 2. Malfunction in Sector 2. All droids will be shut down for reloading of labor programs. Stand by for power disconnect.